Oregon State has just 14 wins over the past 5 years, but can they be more competitive in 2019? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.
It was a rough way to kick off the Jonathan Smith era at Oregon State. The Beavers just went 2-10 and really should have gone 1-11 had it not been for a 31-3 comeback against Colorado in Pac-12 play. But the Beavers are looking to be much more competitive in 2019, especially after out of those 10 losses, only one was decided by just one possession, and that was a loss to the lowly Mountain West opponent in Nevada. But they do have the team to be much more competitive this year and do have the team to improve this year, although they do face a very difficult schedule. The Beavers returned 7 starters on the offensive side of the ball, including their quarterback in Jake Luton, who I have been impressed with, and Jermar Jefferson, who was very quiet last year. No one talked about him, but rushed for over 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns. They also have 4 seniors on this offensive line for the Beavers. So this is an offense that you can expect to take some strides forward, at least statistically, in 2019. Defensively, they return 9 starters. They get Jalen Moore, the leading tackler, had 102 tackles with the Beavers last year, and across the board, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, going to be very experienced and very strong for the Beavers. So, once again, you might not see improvement in the win column this year because of the very difficult schedule, but you will see a much more competitive Oregon State team that could give some teams some scares, and if the things go their way, if things fall their way, could pull off some upsets along the way. They open up against Oklahoma State the Friday night before Week 1 begins on August 31st. And this is an intriguing game, a Pac-12 versus a Big 12 opponent. Oregon State getting to host the Cowboys this year, and Oklahoma State, a team that I'm not super high on in 2019. They lost a handful of starters last year, but the offense, well, once again, as expected under Mike Gundy, will be the key. Sure, do they have a quarterback question? Absolutely. But Chuba Hubbard returns, and he had 740 yards on the ground last year, and Tylan Wallace, one of the best wide receivers in the entire Big 12 returns, had over 1,400 yards receiving last year. So he's going to give, both those guys are going to give this Oregon State defense a fight. The defense for Oklahoma State could struggle a little bit, only 5 returning starters, and they allowed 32.5 points per game. But I'm going to give Oklahoma State the win over Oregon State in what could be a closer game than they are expecting, and a closer game than what some other people could be expecting as well. But Oregon State falls in Week 1. They go on the road to Hawaii. Hawaii is coming off a bye week here because they will be playing in Week 0, August 24th, against Arizona. And Hawaii boasts one of the best quarterbacks in the entire group of 5, and Cole McDonald, who had over 3,800 yards passing last year and 36 touchdowns. Unfortunately for Oregon State, Hawaii also returns 18 starters, including McDonald. This game is on the road. I always picture Hawaii a very difficult place to play for any opponent because they're having to travel to Hawaii, way overseas. Bit of a distraction there. But this Hawaii team, I think, is the real deal. Could very well win 8 or 9 games this season, and one of those wins will be against Oregon State. The Beavers fall to a very experienced and very tough offensive Hawaii team. They do return home and beat Cal Poly. I do believe they take care of them. So they're 1-2. They finally got a win on the board. And I do expect these Oklahoma State and Hawaii losses to be close. Nowhere near some of the blowouts that they faced last year. They get a bye week before they face off against Stanford. And last time Oregon State hosted Stanford, they fell to the Cardinals just 15-14. And I could see that game, this game in 2019, being very similar to the one in 2017 when it was a 1-point loss for the Beavers. Last year, they lost 48-17 to the Cardinal, but I expect them to be much more competitive. But KJ Costello is one of the best quarterbacks in the Pac-12. He will give this defense a fight, this Oregon State defense a fight. I expect it to be close, very, very close, but even though they're coming off a week of rest, they will not have enough to beat the Cardinal. Oregon State falls to 1-3. They go on the road to face UCLA, who just went 3-9 last year, but all 3 of those victories came in Pac-12 play. Chip Kelly, I expect him to really make a huge stride in year 2. We saw those 3 wins last year and also saw how much more competitive UCLA was towards the end of 2018. And even though they weren't necessarily racking up wins, it does carry momentum into 2019. And UCLA returns 19 starters. I really don't see Oregon State standing much of a chance against the Bruins, especially with this game being on the road. They will fall to Chip Kelly's squad, who could very well make a bowl game in year 2. And Oregon State now drops to 1-4. They face off against Utah, who will also be coming off a bye coming into this game, and Utah is the favorite in the Pac-12 South. No doubt in my mind, no doubt in anybody else's mind, they are the favorite to win the South and maybe be a dark horse playoff contender if they can stay healthy. Last year they lost Tyler Huntley and Zach Moss, their star quarterback and running back, and still nearly won the Pac-12, falling to Washington 10-3 in the Pac-12 title game. This game at home for Oregon State, if this Utah defense lives up to the hype, if this Utah team stays healthy, they should take easy care of Oregon State on October 12th. And another loss for the Beavers here. If I can get this to work. They face off against California on the road, who will also be coming off a bye. And you've heard, if you've watched our predictions, how big I am on bye weeks, how important those bye weeks are. And Oregon State, unfortunately, has to face a lot of teams that are going to be coming off a bye themselves. And this California team has one of the best defenses in the entire Pac-12 and one of the best secondaries in the entire nation. So this is going to be a game that Jake Luton and Jermar Jefferson are really going to have to step it up if they want to get a win over California. Fortunately for Oregon State, California's offense is not that good. I think they will struggle mightily in 2019. So maybe Oregon State's defense can step up and this will be a fairly low-scoring game. But in the end, California does own the defensive edge and they do own home field advantage. So California will be getting the win over the Beavers before they get their bye week, their last bye week, to close out the year. They only have one win. They're going to have to win their final 5 if they want to go bowling. And really, that's not what many people expect in 2019. They just expect Jonathan Smith to build on what he started last year. They went 2-10 last year, so a 3-9 season would be improvement. 4-8 would be improvement. But as I mentioned, the schedule is just so tough for Oregon State. They get that bye week going into a game against Arizona on the road. Last year they fell to the Wildcats 35-14 and allowed J.J. Taylor to run all over them. And unfortunately for Oregon State, J.J. Taylor is back, and so is Khalil Tate. If he can stay healthy. He was not himself. He was not the 2017 version of Khalil Tate in 2018 because he was battling an injury, and I do believe that people started to figure out his game. But this game is on the road at Arizona. It's year 2 under Kevin Sumlin. I expect them to make some major improvements. We know the type of offensive coach that he is. So even though they're coming off a week of rest here, Oregon State will fall on the road to the Wildcats, and now they are not going to be able to go bowling. They face off against Washington, where Oregon State has lost 7 straight times to the Huskies by an average of 28 points per game. Last year, though, Oregon State was able to score 23 on the Huskies, and that was against a very solid Washington defense. This year, Washington only returns 2 starters on the defensive side of the ball. Washington needs to be careful here not to overlook this Oregon State team. And I can see this game being very similar to the Stanford game, where I think Oregon State hangs with Washington and keeps it very close. But in the end, Washington will have too much offensively. Jacob Eason at quarterback, Salvin Ahmed, a backup from Myles Gaskin last year, rushed for over 600 yards, will be just fine, and top wide receivers returning for the Huskies. Chris Peterson rarely disappoints. Washington will come on the road and defeat this Oregon State squad. Arizona State, another team that I'm fairly high on this year, and they have a big-time running back in Eno Benjamin, and that's all you have to say in this game. Eno Benjamin, I think, will run all over Oregon State, much like J.J. Taylor did to the Beavers last year. Eno Benjamin had over 1,600 yards on the ground last year. No one was talking about him, but now he's one of the big-time running backs, best running backs in the Pac-12. This rushing defense for Oregon State last year allowed 282 rushing yards per game in 2018. That spells danger and spells danger for Oregon State, but it's a big-time positive for Arizona and Arizona State. Eno Benjamin and the Sun Devils come on the road, get the job done against the Beavers. Another loss for Oregon State. At Washington State, at Oregon to close out the year. Last year, Oregon State's offense scored 37 on the Cougars. So you know the offense is there. They are able to produce the points. They can do it. And with 7 returning starters, they can still put up some points this season. As I've been saying over and over, they will be much more competitive. They will put up the points. They will put up the stats. They will hang with teams. It's whether or not they can get the wins. They will not be able to win against Washington State, who brings in another transfer quarterback in Gage Gabrud, who will still thrive offensively under Mike Leach. And the defense, who I believe returns 6 starters, will still be just fine in 2019. It's on the road for Oregon State, too. That doesn't help their case at all. They fall to the Cougars, and they fall to Oregon in the season finale. Not to be a big surprise there. They've lost the past 2 combined to the Ducks by a combined score of 124-25, and the Ducks return the best quarterback in the Pac-12 and Justin Herbert. Will have one of the top offenses in the nation and will have the top offense in the Pac-12 and are not only Pac-12 title contenders but could be a dark horse playoff contender. This game is on the road. Oregon might be coming off a loss to Arizona State in this game, so Oregon State might have the benefit of catching them on a hangover, but I highly doubt it. They will fall to the Ducks, and that gives Oregon State a 1-11 record in 2019. And I know people are going to criticize that and say, how can a team that should be much more improved decrease in the record, go from 2-10 to 1-11 when this team is clearly better than they were last year in year one under Jonathan Smith? And all I have to say is look at the schedule. Hawaii is not a surefire victory. It's on the road, and they are legit in the Mountain West. Oklahoma State, a talented offensive Big 12 team. And then their Pac-12 schedule, so tough of road games at UCLA, at Oregon, at Washington State, at Arizona, at California, a big-time defensive team. So this schedule doesn't do Oregon State any favors. So while some of these games could be close, and you will see major improvements in the competitiveness and the stats when it comes to the Beavers, you will probably not see it in the win column in 2019. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us here. Go check us out on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert. Go check us out on our website at thegridironexpert.com. The link is in the description below. Go sign up for our newsletter. Go check out our videos and sign up for our expert picks. They are for just $30. You will receive every single one of our 2019 spread picks, including the postseason. It's just a one-time fee, and it's certainly a deal and an opportunity that you cannot pass up if you are a college football fan. So join our team. Go sign up today only at thegridironexpert.com. And guys, as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.